Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another segment of Asaph Cafe. I am your host, Asaph Adonai, and again, on my immediate left, young Briar Hill. And this time, this is another shot of Briar's work. We've put 4 popular cartoons, claymation cartoons of the past together to form this version of Asaph Cafe. And before we start, I want to wish the television audience and whoever is watching this not only a happy Thanksgiving, but a Merry Christmas. And wish Briar a Merry Christmas and his family and all of that too. So this will be fun here. I'm kind of sitting in an unusual position because I don't want to block Fred Astaire on my immediate left there. So, all right, did I say that right? Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, we have Briar Hill here, and we just did a taping with the 10 Commandments, and so this is number 2, Asaph Cafe number 2, because, as I said in the other show, I'll be playing at the mall, so there will be no Asaph Cafe until after the end of the year. And once again, I have my tuxedo t-shirt on, which is showing up very well on camera. I got this from Tuxedo Gallery. Labrina, the manager there, she gave me this t-shirt, so I wanted to acknowledge.
Looks like you're wearing a tux.
Yeah, that's the idea, so she'll see this later on today anyway. Now, let's talk about the history. I probably won't do any physical playing in this one because of where I'm sitting, so I don't block Fred Astaire. Now, to talk about the history, if the television audience looks on the screen, there are 4 of the most popular Christmas cartoons. And when I was growing up, every year they would show these cartoons, and then they had also Frosty the Snowman, which we already did Frosty. Mm-hmm. So Frosty's not here. Now on the top, on my top there where it says Merry Christmas, that is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And then on the, it's so hard to tell whether it's right or left when you're looking on the screen. On the right of that, from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, is Santa Claus is Coming to Town. There, and you can see Santa Claus, before he actually becomes Santa Claus, is giving toys to children. And on the left on the bottom, this was Fred Astaire. He was a famous actor of the 1930s, dancer actor. So they used his image for the introduction of this cartoon here, and that was also Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And then finally, on the bottom left there is the Charlie Brown Christmas. Of all the Charlie Brown cartoons, this one was probably the most popular of all of them. Let me play the intro to that. Let's see, I'll probably be blocking Fred for a little bit, our mailman. You may recognize this, called Christmas Time is Here. Whoops. Might help if I turn the piano on. You recognize it?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful song. And the conclusion. Christmas time is here. So I'll do a combination of sitting here and sitting where I was sitting. So anyway, getting back to Fred Astaire, he was a very famous dancer, probably one of the best dancers in Hollywood history. Probably one of the best dancers that ever lived, the real Fred Astaire. He was very thin in real life, and so he was very agile when he was doing his dancing.
So is the mailman based off of his image then?
Yeah, it's based off of his image. And, wow, over 5 minutes already gone, right?
Did they use his actual voice for the voiceover?
Yeah, it was his
thing?
actual voice. He was narrating at the beginning. Let's talk about this cartoon. So see, at the very beginning, there's Fred Astaire, the mailman, who is telling the television audience how Santa Claus became Santa Claus, if that makes any sense. Because if you look at his mail truck, the children were asking Santa Claus questions like, how come you have a beard? How come you deliver toys? How come you come down the chimney, you know? So Fred Astaire decides to tell the television audience how Santa became Santa. And basically, Meister Burger was like the president. Who thinks this stuff up? Anyway, he was sort of like the head honcho of the town that they lived in. And so somebody dropped off a baby at Meister Burger's door, which happened to be a baby Kris Kringle. And he didn't want no baby. He's like, get this baby out of here. I don't want no brat around here. Real nice guy. So he orders one of his men to take the baby and just take it to a baby shelter or wherever, you know, they do with babies. And while the servant was taking the baby to where it was supposed to go, the wind blows the baby away and he ends up going like to the North Pole. So he's raised, Kris Kringle is raised, you know, in the North Pole. And then by the time he grows up and gets of age, if you look on the top where he's given the children those toys, that's what he grows up to become. And he's at the North Pole. He says, okay, they always wanted to deliver toys, but they couldn't deliver. So they raised Kris Kringle. He says, okay, I'll deliver those toys. And at first, there wasn't no once a year. He was just going to different towns. And he ends up in the same town where Burgermeister was at. And, of course, the Meister doesn't remember the baby Claus, but he sees this adult Claus, and he reacts just as well. He banned children having toys in his community.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the reason he did that is because he had stepped on a children's toy and slipped and broke his leg. So he said, okay, no more toys for the children. So when Kris shows up not knowing about that decree, he thinks it's the silliest law. And he goes and gives the kids toys anyway. And so that's what Fred Astaire is telling the story, see? So, and while Fred Astaire is telling the story, you can see the actual images on here. I have to use my imagination for the sake of this show, still pictures. So anyway, Kris Kringle is giving these children toys. He gets arrested by Meisterburger, so what a name. And of course, the school teacher thinks he's nuts at first for giving those kids toys until Kris gives her, the school teacher, a toy. And she starts liking him. So she says, you know, he's not a bad guy. I'm going to start helping him. And then they go on to get married. They move to the North Pole kind of thing. And they build this big castle. And they start getting all these toys.
So the teachers marry Claus then?
Yeah, the teacher marries Claus and helps him to deliver toys and get away from Meisterburger. And it was just a cute little family show. And finally, when he loses power, everything changes. And then, of course, the workload got too much for Santa going there every night delivering toys. He had to cut it down to once a year. And how the chimney came about was Burgermeister had ordered the doors locked at night. So the only way to get a house is through the chimney. Now, we know that this is all fun imagination, you know. If you're a kid, this is just great storytelling, you know. It's just fun imagination for the story of Santa Claus.
I can remember watching them. I just don't remember the plot all that well.
Well, that was pretty much the plot of, if you look on the bottom behind me, that's Fred Astaire's character. It's the same cartoon. And then on the top, I'm going to say my top right, or left of the screen, who's ever watching. So that's the same. That's Santa Claus is coming to town. And it's this great imagination. Now, the one on the top left, where it says Merry Christmas, this is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And it's pretty much the same thing. Rudolph is born with a red nose, and his parents were embarrassed. Oh, no kid of mine's going to have a red nose, so they cover it up with black. And it causes his voice to sound funny, like he has a cold, because it's covering his nose. So Rudolph gets of age where they're playing baseball, reindeer style, and so once a year the coach would pick a group of reindeers who's going to be on Santa's team, and that's a reindeer boy's dream. So Rudolph gets chosen along with some of his friends while his nose was covered up, and so there was this girl that had a crush on Rudolph, so she gives him a little kiss on the cheek. And he's like, yeah! He flies up in the air. And Coach is like, not bad, kid. You might be one of the reindeers on Santa's team, because all the reindeers want to be on Santa's team. You'll see where I'm going with this. So his nose falls off, and it's a red nose, and so everybody's laughing at it. You know the song, they all laughed at Rudolph and stuff, and they didn't want him on the team or joining the reindeer game with the red nose, but the girl still liked him. She thought he was cuter with the red nose than with that black nose sounding like he had a cold. But you know the song, the Rudolph song, he gets ousted. And then finally, jump to the middle of the program for time's sake, there's the winter storm, and so the reindeer Comet and all the rest of them, they can't see. And so Rudolph has the red nose. And so that's how come he gets to be in the front of Santa's team. And Santa's like, oh, that red nose, that's going to come in handy. You want to lead my team? So all the people that ousted him, he ends up being
like the leader of them.
The leader. And so now he's accepted, see. And that's kind of like real life, in a way. If you think about it, that is kind of like real life. Somebody can have an extraordinary talent, and they get ousted at first, and then when that talent's needed, all of a sudden they're
because
the hero.
it's different.
Yeah, different. And I think people fear things that are different, So the old saying, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, And now the best for last, on the bottom left where you're sitting, of course, this is Charlie Brown, and of course you probably know the creator was Charles Schulz.
I didn't know that.
Oh, okay. He was a cartoonist, famous cartoonist of the past. He created these characters. They were called the Peanuts cartoons. And of course, Charlie Brown is the major center focal point of the cartoons. And there's Linus, the kid with the blanket.
Who's the kid with like the dirt flying around him?
That is Pigpen.
He was always my favorite character.
Yeah, he's the dirty one. But they're all major characters. But the main major characters is Charlie Brown, Linus, the kid with the blanket, and probably Schroeder, the kid that plays the piano. So anyway, Schultz did a series of not only Peanuts, like in the newspaper, but by the time they got into television, they were doing they had like a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving and all the other holidays like Easter and so on. Excuse me. But getting back to this Christmas one, this went on to become, the best one. And how that became the best, in case there's somebody watching who doesn't know, there's a scene in there where Charlie Brown says, can anybody tell me what the meaning of Christmas is? And Linus says, yeah, I can tell you, Charlie Brown. And he reads the biblical account in Luke chapter 2. And there were shepherds abiding in the field. You know that story? Keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came. And they were sore afraid. The shepherds were afraid because this angel appeared. He said, we bring you tidings of great joy. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And they put all that in that Luke account into this Charlie Brown cartoon, and it caused it not only to get a special award, but it caused it to become the #1 cartoon of all time. All the not just the Charlie Brown, but all those claymation characters, just by putting that biblical account in there. History says that Charles Schulz had to really fight to get that on there, because Hollywood, you mention God or Jesus, and they just kind of freak out. They don't realize that that's really what it's about. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the Santa Claus and all that. That's fine. It's all fun, and I don't have no problem with that. And a lot of people don't. But you got to remember. I mean, I'm not here to preach anyone, but you have to remember, whatever your religious belief is, it talks about Christ and the Savior coming to the world, and I think that should be remembered along with Christmas too. Like when you're watching these cartoons and so on. But getting back to these cartoons, plural, these were just fun, family cartoon, and they had other cartoons too that we don't have
Mhm.
on here. They had the Drummer Boy. Do you remember that one?
I know that
The
name,
Drummer
but
Boy.
I don't know.
It went like this. I'll play the song. You recognize
Yes,
it?
I know that one.
The Drummer Boy. Beautiful song. There you go. So, Little Drummer Boy. But and then there were a slew of other cartoons too that they had during those years. And every year, what they would do is show these cartoons starting sometime in November, like close to Thanksgiving, leading up to Christmas. And sometimes, like, they would show it one last time on New Year's Eve, like Frosty the Snowman. At the end, he says, "We'll see you at Christmas." You know, when they were showing it for Thanksgiving, they say, "See you at Christmas." Then, of course, Christmas comes, they would show it again. And so it worked.
Mhm.
But, you know, this was a different time period. Obviously, I don't know if they even show these
I
cartoons
think they do.
anymore.
Because I've talked to my little brother about them before. He's
Okay.
5.
Right,
So-
well, he can see this episode here. I'll make you a copy of this when we're done with this. But they were just fun, simple family cartoons. And when I was a kid, and the people I grew up with, we all looked forward every year to seeing these cartoons. And they usually showed all 4 of these somewhere, maybe not at the same time, but
Mhm.
like on a Tuesday maybe we went out, and maybe Friday be another one and stuff, and they stretched it out. So it was just a delightful time growing up. So do you have a favorite holiday?
I actually like Halloween. Strangely.
Well, you know, you're not the first person that has said that. You know, I don't think Halloween is bad in and of itself.
Mhm.
But, and I don't want to sound religious or anything, it's the history of Halloween
Yeah.
is why people have a problem with it. But as far as, like, children putting costumes on, I think that's
Yeah, I
harmless.
always like dressing up and going and getting candy and trick or treat.
Yeah, I don't think that's bad.
Mhm.
We're talking about the history, the
Yeah.
whole history of it. And it has a kind of a dark side, which I won't get into on this show, but that's why. But as far as just costumes, because the idea of the costumes, that wasn't part of the dark side at
Mhm.
all. So you have to watch Pat Robertson on the 700 Club to get the whole history.
Yeah, I don't really know
does
too
he
much,
does
but-
this really detailed thing. And so he doesn't tell people don't celebrate Halloween. He says that's an individual thing. Some families will let their kids do that, and some won't, and that's an individual thing. But they have other events in Halloween night now that you can do. Like there are a lot of churches that have get-togethers. They're watching movies and instead of the trick-or-treating kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I guess that's harmless, you know.
Yeah.
And then also another thing that's interesting about not Halloween, but what is it? October 31st. This past October 31st was the actual 500th anniversary of Martin Luther. I don't know if you have you ever heard of him.
No.
He was a famous priest 500 years ago. He stuck what was called a thesis on the wall of the church. They just celebrated that this year, 2017.
It's crazy.
It started the Reformation. I don't know if you ever heard of that. The Protestant church movement
Oh, okay.
got started because see, he didn't agree with the way the church did things back in whatever year it was, 1599 or whatever it was. And he was like this genius, like priest, like is the way to describe it. He wrote this thesis, he tacked it on a wall of the church, like this is the way it should be. And of course, he got a lot of heat for that. I have to kind of paraphrase that because I'm not a theologian, but it started this Reformation Protestant thing that we still have in the 21st century. So They just celebrated Martin Luther, October 31st. So, you know, that has nothing to do with Halloween, obviously, but that's a big deal in history. And this year, 2017, was the literal 500
that's cool.
year anniversary of that. That sticking the thesis on the wall, which started the Reformation and the Protestant period. And I grew up Protestant too, so just have to thank old Martin Luther for that. He just, and I'm not picking on the church at that time because none of us were there, but from what I understand about church history, they were just kind of funny about things. Like they didn't want the Bible out
like
to
really
the common
specific.
man. Yeah, they just kept the Bible to that small.
The reserved few.
Yeah, like
they
a
felt
prince or a king maybe or somebody, and they started the printing press around that time, and they started like people like William Tyndale, I think was his name. He's like, hey, we gotta get this Bible out to everybody, not just some king or somebody. So they start printing all that, and the more they tried to wipe it out, the more it started growing, and people wanted more Bibles, and that's where modern time our Bibles come from, that printing press that get that. Because, the Bible wasn't written in English, obviously. It was written in Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, I think. And it just kind of spread when it got to Europe. So that's a little Bible trivia history there. And then, of course, these cartoons come out, and they don't, mention the Bible, but you can tell there's some Bible overtones and so on. But they're just fun, and I'm fortunate enough to have each one of these in my collection. I collect VHS movies and I collect DVD movies, and I have about 300 in my collection, but they're put in drawers, so you don't know. But what's interesting about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that cartoon is 45 years old. Can you believe that? Because I have the 45th anniversary editions. Charlie Brown is I think 50 years old now, and I think the two Rudolphs are 50 years old also. And on the cover of the DVD I have at home says 50th anniversary, so it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy the impact those characters have had.
But the Charlie Brown is still to this day considered number one, all because of that biblical account that they put in there. They weren't trying to convert nobody or whatever necessarily. They just wanted to tell the story.
Yeah, and they had to tell it real.
Yeah, tell it real. And he, when you see any documentary on Charles Schultz, you'll see when he talks about that he got people resistance. We're talking about producers, not the public. Whoever is in charge of creating or whatever major studio that they did at that time. And it worked. And here it is, 2017, it's still considered number one. That also, I'll tell you a story. A famous singer named Tennessee Ernie Ford, you probably never heard of him. He was like this country singer, and he had this deep baritone voice. He did a song called 16 Tons. I owe my soul to the company because I have to work, that kind of thing. It was just an interesting song. But he had a television show called the Tennessee Ernie Ford television show. And what made his show become number one, they were doing all those country songs of that time period. But at the end of his show, he would sing a religious hymn. He got a lot of heat from the producers, like, oh no, we don't think you should do this. And he decided to do it. He wasn't preaching. He just singing, those old songs like Rock of Ages, I don't know if you ever heard of them, or The Old Rugged Cross, any of those. And he would just sing it with a nice choir in the background. And then he would say, good night, everybody, and that was it. It caused his show, it caused his show not only to become number one, but then more people, fans started watching. They started writing the television studio, we got to get this guy singing more of those hymns. And it became a trademark. So, it was like this variety show, like comedy and singing, just all country stuff. And at the end, he would just always, every week, people tuned in every week just out of curiosity to see what religious hymn this man was going to sing. And it worked.
It seems like Hollywood's scared to use anything religious.
Yeah, and I don't know why that is, but it's always been like that in Hollywood.
I think just to avoid stepping on people's feet, probably.
But see, you're not preaching at anyone. All he did was sung a hymn.
Yeah, and if they don't like it, they don't have to watch it.
Yeah, Lawrence Welk, you probably won't know him, but he did that. Once a year they would have what was called a Christmas special.
And there was a famous singer named Andy Williams. You probably don't know him. He did a song called Moon River, and he made it famous. Signature song. He did it got to the point where every year they would have what was called the Andy Williams Christmas special. And everybody tuned in to watch it. They had the young Osmond, you know, Marie Osmond, she's grown up now, Donnie Osmond, but they were like babies, like, and they were cute when they're on his show. And now Michael Bublé, I don't know if you know him.
I know that name.
He's the current guy that they have Christmas, Michael Bublé Christmas. They're pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little updated compared to Tennessee Ernie Ford and Andy Williams, but the same thing. And I don't know why Hollywood just freaks out when you mention Jesus, but there's no reason for it. All it does is just causes people to watch it more. And so whoever be watching this here, they're just going to go back in nostalgia. They can see these images that you created, and they're fun. They're a lot of fun. Now, of course, this whole generation of actors are all gone now for real. This was 40, 50 years ago. But when I was a kid growing up, they were fun to watch. And my personal favorite was Charlie Brown. So,
Yeah, no, I can definitely remember watching them too. Just
Yeah.
kind of cool to look at the age gap between us, and that we both watched them.
Yeah, because they haven't changed it. It's the same thing. Just have to remember how to... I haven't done it in a while. These keys aren't working that well either, so it's kind of hard to play it on here. But even with the generation gap between you and I, everybody can relate to Charlie Brown. And I think it was very wise for Schultz to leave that legacy of putting that biblical account on there because in 2017 it still works. So anyway, but everybody has a favorite holiday. My personal favorite, I think, I'm leaning more toward Thanksgiving now than Christmas.
I like Thanksgiving too.
And Christmas is fun because it talks about the baby Jesus, whereas some people like Easter because, according to the New Testament, he rose from the dead. I've seen dead people. They don't come back to life. But Christ did. So, you know, they celebrate that. And, of course, they celebrate that to this very day, 2017, Easter. And that's a pretty cool holiday because they show all the fun movies, too. Like that Ten Commandments that we did on the other cafe and stuff like that. So it just becomes tradition, you know. It's just fun.
They're just fun times of the year. Really.
Yeah, and I like the other holidays that maybe don't stand out, like 4th of July. That's a fun one. Yeah, the Independence Day, and of course Valentine's Day is a fun one. You know, all the marriages really go up. People go to Vegas and get these little quick marriages on Valentine's Day and stuff. I have a personal friend that was married on 4th of July. They chose that day because not only was it Independence Day for the United States, but you know it'd be easy to remember their anniversary.
You'll never forget that one.
Yeah, no, 4th of July. Guy I used to play the piano for years ago. God, this must have been about 20 years ago when I used to play for this guy. So he's probably been married a lot of years by now. And I remember when they came up to me when I was playing the piano. This is before I moved to Missoula. And they said, "Hey, Asaph, we're getting married 4th of July." And I thought, cool. I think if I were going to get married, I'd like to get married on 4th of July. Because they wanted to pick something that's considered a little different than the traditional holidays. And all the other holidays are fun, too. What is it? Veterans. We just celebrated Veterans Day. That's pretty cool, too, for vets. And let's plug the vets for a second. Even though we're on a Christmas set, we really appreciate the veterans who fight for our freedom.
For sure.
You know, stuff like that. And nobody wants to be killed while defending the country.
No,
but that's just a noble thing that they do. And I think that our veterans ought to be acknowledged every year, in my opinion, and their families and so on, because let's face it, if they weren't fighting for our freedom, you and I would be sitting in front of this set talking about Charlie Brown for one. Think about that. It'd be some dictator or somebody, We're like Burgermeister, you know? No toys for the kids. I'm telling the tame version. It'd be a lot worse if that were real, but so I think that's great for our vets, and we just celebrated Veterans Day, so give them a quick plug on the cafe. And you know what I like about Thanksgiving? I'm going somewhere with this, you'll see. What I like about Thanksgiving is from November 1st all the way up to, say, New Year's Eve, technically you're celebrating a Christmas holiday in a sense that covers all those months. It covers November, it covers December, and the beginning of January. So that's pretty cool, and that's a lot of celebrating, you know, to remembering all that. Now, getting to Thanksgiving, I want to get specific. I want to talk about the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. Did you see that? The Charlie Brown Thanksgiving?
Yep.
Remember that scene? Peppermint Patty, she was always intrusive. And she would invite herself when she wasn't invited. So she invites herself to Charlie Brown's house for Thanksgiving. And Charlie Brown tried to tell her, hey, well, I'm not even going to be home. Me and my family, we're going to be gone. So what Snoopy and Charlie Brown do is they make the toast bread and the pretzel sticks and the popcorn. And so Peppermint Patty invites all the friends without telling Charlie Brown necessarily. So they, you know that scene, they get to the table, they have the pool table out, and Charlie Brown and Snoopy are serving the toast and the pretzel sticks. Boy, what a Thanksgiving. Some people don't even get that, so that technically that would be something to be thankful for. Where I'm going with this is like Peppermint Patty's looking and she's like, what blockhead cooked all this? And when she said that, I was cracking up. Talking about not being thankful, right? She says, where's the turkey, Chuck? Where's the mashed potatoes and the cranberry, Chuck? And all that stuff. It was so funny. And so Charlie Brown walks off all sad. Marcy says, did he really invite you here? Did you invite yourself? And so Peppermint Patty says, hey, will you go and apologize to him for me? She says, no, I think you need to do that. But it had a happy ending because then all Peppermint Patty and all the other kids got to go to Charlie Brown's grandparents' house and have a real Thanksgiving dinner. But see, I think the point to that was whether you get pretzel sticks for real or turkey dinner, it's about being thankful. And that's what I like about Thanksgiving. Yes, it's cool to have turkey and watch football and see John Madden on TV every year commentating. That's pretty cool, but
I like Thanksgiving because I get to see a lot of family that I
see, and that's good too because you know there's no saying you should always tell your loved ones you love them. You don't know, that might be the last time. I've heard some radio broadcasts like Focus on the Family and things like that. You won't know these broadcasts. They're just like these broadcasts that they'll talk about what's going on in the world or somebody's life, like if they're interviewing someone. And they had this story on there about this. I think there's one person recently that didn't say I love you to a family member. I think they had an argument or something. And then that person passed away later on that day.
Yeah.
So they never got a chance to write that. So Focus on the Family was trying to get this person to forgive themselves. But see, where I'm going with this is if you get to see loved ones, you shouldn't take it for granted.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Thanksgiving does. It's a reminder and stuff like that. And then, of course, we had the Christmas ones and so on. But that's why I like it, because all the radio stations are playing that comfortable, soothing music and stuff like that. And we got literally 10 minutes left.
Holy
this just
cow.
went by so quick, you know?
They fly by.
Yeah, it does. So this is kind of a flyover of the history of these cartoons. And, you know, I know you like your Halloween. That's cool, too. That's fun. And, but my favorite is either Thanksgiving or Easter. I'm leaning more toward that, but I like them all. They're all fun. And I like those Bible movies that they show on Easter, too. Did you see, the most popular one was called The Robe.
I'm not sure if I've seen that or not.
Well, that's not a Bible story. What the guys that created that, now Christ had an actual robe before he was hung on the cross. So the storyteller with the robe, they told the story of Jesus and his coming back to life from the point of the robe.
That's interesting.
Even though that's not really what the Bible says, but they told the story based on the robe. And so actually, there was this gladiator, and he's like like take the sword and whoop everybody, right? But he had a guilty conscience because he was the one that ordered the execution of Christ. So when they got the robe was presented to the gladiator, and he thought the robe was bewitched. You know, like it was going to get him. And it wasn't going to get him, it was just his conscience. So I thought that was an interesting story to tell the story of the crucifixion from the point of the robe.
Yeah, it's an interesting point of view for sure.
Even though it's not in the Bible.
Yeah.
It does tell of the robe that Christ wore, and they did gamble for it. They were throwing dice to see who was going to get the robe. They didn't want to tear a robe. They would say, hey, we got him on the cross. He's all stripped naked just about. Let's just gamble for the robe. Now, that is in the New Testament. So they actually, the soldiers had dice, or whatever the dice was at that time period. And so that happened. So the storyteller of the movie The Robe just used his imagination to tell the story of Christ from the point of the robe. And I find that interesting.
Does that robe still exist today?
I don't know. If it does, it's probably in a museum somewhere in Jerusalem or,
The Vatican or something.
Yeah, who knows. But that was interesting storytelling. And so this gladiator, he sort of has a little mental lapse because he was afraid of this robe. And as I said, the robe, there was nothing magic about it. It was his conscience. And how he got well, his slave says, you are not afraid of this robe. And he's like, get that robe away from me. I tell you to get that robe away from me. You know, he's like really afraid. And so that slave says, you're going to face this fear. And he takes the robe and he throws it at his master. And it's like all in his face like this. And he's like, hey, this is just a piece of cloth. There's nothing magic about this cloth. And that's how he gets well. And then he becomes a Christian in the movie, right? And then he goes against his emperor. And so they had this scene just before execution. And then, of course, when they execute, they don't actually show it in those days, which is cool. So he's like, sire, I've served you all my life. And that sire was like really bad. He's like, but you're not going to be a Christian and serve in my empire. He's like, no, sire, I'm a Christian now. I'm not going to serve you. I like you, but I'm not going to serve you. And Jesus has given me my mind back. You know, it's just that whole scene. And that emperor was going off. Well, if you don't want to serve your emperor, you can go die with that Jesus. And he orders the execution, right? And then the girlfriend, she's like, if you're going to execute this guy who served you, I don't want no part of your kingdom. I'm going with him. So she goes with him, right? You both can die. But what was interesting was how they did it. Instead of like going to a gallows and stuff, they showed, they were playing this drum music. Who was that solid? So they were holding hands, right? And all of a sudden the screen just starts forming a cloud. And that represents the execution going to heaven. And I think that's tame instead of showing like
the actual.
Yeah, you don't need to do that. But that robe came out, I think, 1956 also. Maybe even earlier than that. It's one of the best Easter movies probably in history. That's how popular that movie is. Well, was then. I don't know about now in 2017. But I have that movie in my collection too. But it's just an interesting plot line about facing your fears. You know, there was no bad luck or magic on that. It was just a piece of cloth that Christ happened to wear. And it was his guilty conscience that made him feel bad. So when he learned to face that robe and forgive himself, he becomes a Christian. He defies his emperor and defends Christ. And that was pretty cool. Just wonderful, fun movies. All the Ten Commandments, all those movies are all fun movies, and unfortunately, don't make movies like that anymore. But that's okay, because as long as they can preserve the film, they just keep showing it year after year after year.
It'll never die then.
Yeah, if they just keep it that way. You know, we got about three minutes left. It was so fun how.
Yeah.
And it's always fun sharing these historical, excuse me, point of views of these old movies. But you have any final things you want to say?
Just happy holidays again.
Yeah, I'll take this opportunity to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas. And of course, can you believe it? 2018's coming up.
No, it's crazy.
Yikes! You know, what year were you born?
97.
You were born in 90. Well, you were probably too young to remember when 2000 came.
I don't really remember.
Yeah, you probably won't remember. Basically, everybody was acting like the world was going to come to an end because it was the year 2000. And my thought was, hey, this is just another day like any other day. because everybody thought the computer system was going to crash because it was still relatively new then
Mhm.
compared to today. And they thought that the timing and just the whole clock system, just everything was going to go wacko. The bank system was going to fall apart. Everybody was thinking, oh man, the world's coming to an end. 2000 came, it was just a fun day like any other day. Nothing happened. In fact, I have the ABC News in my collection. The year 1999 turned into 2000. You know how they go to different parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And when 2000 hit, it was just another fun day like any other day. But that's Hollywood for you, I guess.
Yeah.
And the guy that was running it, Peter Jennings, was the, you won't know him, he's gone now. He was like what CBS, you know, the current
Mhm.
people like Michelle Miller and all those people that you might know. Scott Pelley and all them. Well, anyway, there was a guy named Peter Jennings that ran ABC for years and years, way back. So when 2000 came, he was the host of that, ABC News, with Peter Jennings at the time. But it's just amazing how time flies.
Yeah, it's crazy.
2018. I turned, I think I turned like 40 in the year 2000, something like that. And I remember I was in high school, and I used to think of the year 2000. I used to think, oh God, that's like gonna be forever
Yeah.
before it gets here. And when 2000 came, and in my case, really came and went, and now it's 2018. So it's amazing. Any other final words you want to say?
No, just thanks for having me on the show. I've had fun.
Well, yeah, I was going to tell you on camera, feel free to use any of those images of past cafes. They may come in handy for,
Okay, for
you
sure.
can say, you know, you did the green screen and the credits, and even the shows before the credits, they're still your work. You can just go and pick any one.
Okay.
Just pick it off that computer there, and so on. Anyway, this is Briar Hill. He created this backdrop here, this current backdrop. I am your host, Asaph Adonai, and on my left, Briar Hill. And this is the last Asaph Cafe for sure. I thought that 10 Commandments, this will be the last one here, because I'm playing them all starting next Friday, and so we won't be back until the first week or so, second week in January of 2018. Wow, that just sounds so futuristic, you know? 2018, God, it's amazing. And when I was a kid, I never thought I'd see this day. And it's even more rewarding from my point of view that I could see these shows when I was a child on my show, you know, squeezing.
Kind of
episodes
mixed
in
with
it.
future technology too.
Yeah, it's just amazing, you know. I never thought I'd see myself with these images, and I have you to thank too, so I wanted to say thank you. I'm going to let you end this here with final words, but before I do, until our next show next year, Maranatha, you got any final thing? You can conclude it.
Thanks for having me on. Happy holidays, everybody. Hope you have a good day.
There's that chord right there. Make yourself at home, and I'll shut everything down.
All right.